So there was moments as we were growing where I had employees who would be making assumptions around like, oh, well, I don't want to bother so-and-so because they're so busy and that kind of thing. And it's so hard to determine that, especially in a remote environment, to know, is someone busy? Are they at their desk? Can you tell if they're stressed out or whatever? So as we scaled our business, I'm like, okay, as we went from 5 employees to 10 to 15 to almost 30, I just wanted to have a place where we could have transparency in terms of people's workloads. So we created this thing called the Busy-O-Meter, and every day it posts at 11 a.m. and asks people, how busy are you, from a scale of 1 to 10? And so our editors or accounts people or whatever will check in from a 1 if they have nothing on their plate really, or a 10 if they're totally slammed, or an 11 if they're beyond slammed and they need help. And so I think this was something that really helped us scale in a remote environment, have that kind of company culture and like understand where our bandwidth was. If there was a couple editors who had room for stuff, because we have the Busy-O-Meter that checks in every day and is open source to the whole company, it let us like be able to not lose any of people's valuable time if they were just sitting around.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we talk about innovation, specifically scaling by innovating in your business. When you think about innovation in your business, do you want more of it? Do you feel like you have to drag your people to think differently and to make changes? Well, it's very common because most companies don't have innovation as a part of their DNA. And so we have a very special guest with us today, Justin Superstar with BMP Creative. Justin is one of the first video bloggers ever. This is according to his sizzle reel. I didn't do the fact check on that, but really excited to have him on the show today. He's done apps that he's developed before that are centered around the video world. He's done documentaries. He's done work with Google. He's done work with Netflix. It's incredible, kind of background that we have with Justin today. And he talks about scaling by innovation. And when you think about getting your employees to think differently and to make changes, it's not always easy. So one of the keys that he has shared with us, and we go in deeper into this, is having a core set of values that drive the company, those company values that we talk about so much. But he hires based on them, and he's got a special question that he drops the knowledge in there that will give you an understanding if someone has the ability to think naturally, to innovate. And I love that question, so you'll like it too. When you think about scaling by innovation, you also want to make sure that you are creating the kind of company that lives that, not just something they say. And so we talk about what that really means inside this conversation with Justin. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do leadership development in fast growth companies. If you have a huge opportunity in front of you and you want to ensure that everyone is aligned together and that you are prepared for this opportunity, then we can have a conversation. I can use some of the tools I've been using over the last decade plus with Inc. 5000 level companies that are all facing huge opportunities in front of them. And I would give this to you for free. I want to connect with you. I want to, really understand you. And if there's a fit for us to move forward, we will discuss that. But this is not a sales call. It truly is about understanding where you are, where you're going, and what's standing in the way of that. And that may sound like a sales call conversation, but it's just a natural coaching conversation, if you will, because that's what I've known for. And I'm happy to give it away for you if you feel like you could use it and you're willing to be coachable, and it's absolutely free. So just go to gene@genehammett.com. That's my email address. Send me a quick email, say you heard me on the podcast, and let's set up a time to talk about your next big opportunity and making sure you have alignment with it. Gene@genehammett.com. Now, let's get into the interview with Justin. Hey, Justin, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
We're going to have a great conversation. Before we get started, I'd love for you to tell us about your company, BMP Creative.
So BMP Creative, we're a social media agency and really started, I've been doing internet video since like the year 2000. And so through that was a part of a lot of early startups and eventually making my way to Google/YouTube, which really wasn't for me exactly. So I decided to make the very prudent decision to quit Google and start BMP. And it is an agency where we do branded content, documentary, all kinds of stuff, anything relating to video on the internet. And it's been a long-term journey, but really the last couple of years has been some pretty crazy growth, and that's what I'm excited to chat about.
Well, we're going to dive in here today. You're in the marketing world and you've got your hand on video. It's changing so fast. What do you think is the biggest, what video will be like in the next 3 years? Is there any kind of vision that you have for us?
Well, what's interesting is obviously the tools to make video are changing so rapidly, and not necessarily only with AI, but I think that a lot of these tools are allowing. It sort of reminds me of like when cameras started to be able to use like film lenses on more consumer cameras. And I remember doing video in like 2007 or watching Lost. And I'm like, how do they get that shallow depth of field? Like, that looks so cool. And then all of a sudden, we're all filming on these specific cameras with these lenses where we could all get that look, like it would look like Lost. And that didn't necessarily mean that there was more Lost quality content. It just meant more stuff looked better. And so in the same way with AI and those other tools, there's just going to be a lot of stuff that you could say looks better, but what's going to be missing, the same as anything, is really like 80% of anything is not good. So the same way 80% of things with the lost looking shallow depth of field didn't make the story good, didn't make the heart of it good. So I can see the overall bar for how content looks elevating quite a bit within the next couple of years. But really the differentiator is always going to be, what's the story? What's the human emotion here? It's going to be people driven. So curators and ideators and people with that kind of story are still going to be able to create stuff. And the high level is going to keep getting higher, and the low level is going to kind of keep elevating with that. So I think it's a really exciting time, especially for storytellers. And I'm just fascinated to see like how it's going to change things.
I know that having the tools isn't the answer, but I am curious to your answer. You mentioned AI tools for video. What is your favorite AI tool for editing video?
Well, I mean, we're working on some ourselves, right? And this is part of how we scaled with our biggest client is Netflix. And so really for us, like we're doing, last year we did somewhere around 3,000 videos for Netflix alone. And so what we've done is build specific tools, some of them based on AI, especially AI transcription, to allow us to like create faster, essentially. So I've used ChatGPT, of course. I've used Midjourney. There's another AI video service I'm using recently called Kling. And it's interesting because a lot of the times, like we need this really encyclopedic knowledge of the Netflix shows and movies as we kind of go into them. And so you talk about certain series that are like, we're doing season 6 and we need to make something that relates to a character that's been in the 5 seasons before. And I remember getting really excited and being like, okay, I'm going to make a custom AI agent in ChatGPT that's going to have this encyclopedic knowledge of the show Outer Banks. It's going to know everything about the show Outer Banks or Stranger Things or whatever. So I made this ChatGPT agent and I gave it to my writers and I was like, guys, use this. You can just put in whatever you want. It's going to tell you exactly where different moments happen for a character. And so the writers started using it. And when they started checking the work, 90% of what it was spitting out was like totally made up. So I was very confidently being like, yes, in season 3, episode 5, this thing happens to this character. And it was complete nonsense. And so I think that's kind of an interesting where we build tools to help us scale faster sometimes, but also a lot of times you still need the human to fact check it. And AI can very confidently like lead you astray. So in terms of tools, the thing that we built is called Submachine. And so we were doing these red carpet events for Netflix, and the dynamic subtitles like that pop up word by word is obviously a huge thing in social media. And so we needed to turn around sometimes up to 50, maybe even 100 assets over the course of a few hours. And putting those word by word subtitles was really tedious. So we, using AI transcription, built this tool called Submachine, which will allow us to do that 10 times faster than doing it the manual way. So by building that tool, it allowed us to do more, have less tedious burden on the editors, and also create something which now has thousands of monthly subscribers. And that's the kind of journey that I'm really excited about, is being an agency that sees problems and builds tools to solve those that could be applicable across a wide group of people.
I love the story. It's a great transition into our core topic today, which is scaling with innovation. I've always said this, and I think that marketers have it the roughest out there in industry because things change so much. The tools change, the way attention changes, the length of things changes. All of that's changing at such a rapid pace that what worked last quarter may not even be registering in the top 10 now. So scaling by innovation, you've got 26 employees. You made the Inc. list at 953, which is very impressive. What do you mean by scaling by innovation?
So for us, we basically, when we started working with Netflix, it was in around 2020, and so we very quickly needed to just add people because the work kept growing more and more. And so for us, we always were a remote workforce, so we didn't have a central office. We had very low overhead, and there can be really simple ways that you can innovate that helps even with team building and that kind of thing. So there was moments as we were growing where I had employees who would be making assumptions around like, oh, well, I don't want to bother so-and-so because they're so busy and that kind of thing. And it's so hard to determine that, especially in a remote environment, to know, is someone busy? Are they at their desk? Can you tell if they're stressed out or whatever? So as we scaled our business, I'm like, okay, as we went from 5 employees to 10 to 15 to almost 30, I just wanted to have a place where we could have transparency in terms of people's workloads. So we created this thing called the Busyometer, and every day it posts at 11 a.m. and asks people, how busy are you from a scale of 1 to 10? And so our editors or accounts people or whatever will check in from a 1 if they have nothing on their plate really, or a 10 if they're totally slammed, or an 11 if they're beyond slammed and they need help. And so I think this was something that really helped us scale in a remote environment, have that kind of company culture and like understand where our bandwidth was. If there was a couple editors who had room for stuff, because we have the Busyometer that checks in every day and is open source to the whole company, it let us like be able to not lose any of people's valuable time if they were just sitting around. So it's simple things like that that helped us have this cohesive community. It's tech adjacent, but it's also really community powered. And that's something that is super important to us.
And so you've talked about that little internal tool. You've talked about building external tools that you're started internally. So those are really good examples. Is technology part of your background, or are you from a marketing
So
background?
I was doing internet video, like I said, like 1999, 2000, like when I was in high school. And for me, it was always this perfect mix of a technical challenge and then also a creative challenge. So 25 years ago, it was not easy to get a video on the internet. You needed your own server and you needed a dedicated audience who would spend 20 minutes downloading a 20 meg video file to watch something, right? And so there was a lot of technical things to solve there. And that's something where I feel like that's always been my kind of hybrid secret sauce is I wanted to solve the technical challenge, but I also loved making stuff. And so I've also done apps. I created an app that was the #1 iPad app in America with some friends called Video Time Machine, where we basically took 30,000 videos and hand curated them from YouTube by the year they were originally created. So you could scroll back to like 1968 and watch commercials from 1968. And that's another thing where it was a technical challenge. I never made an app before, but it was really cool to put together because I was able to create something with friends and put it out there. And that was an app that we sold to another company and allowed me to move to other creative pursuits. So it's always like that kind of joy of, sometimes I've been guilty of over engineering for sure, but the joy of being like, what is the technical solution that we can bring in that can help us just work smarter and better and like more cohesively. So that kind of stuff is like what's so fun, especially now as we talk about the different tools that allow people to program, allow people to make apps. That's like right now is really freeing up a lot of people's time to be able to like create stuff where they never could before.
So innovation is a core theme across your business. So that means you have to hire people who have innovation kind of baked in. So what's the secret there?
So innovation is like one of our core values. That's something that's like really important to us. And I think for me, a lot of the times if we're interviewing for someone, I love to just ask like what their side projects are. because that for me is really where I had my most fun, whether it was like building communities as a side project, or making apps or whatever. So I remember talking with one person who was saying that their side project was, they were strategists, and we worked with them as a freelancer for a while. But she was saying that she would go in and like she would custom wire like these video distortion tools, and it's had nothing to do with strategy or whatever. But I was just like so enamored with the idea of like, yeah, this person is just, she's like with a soldering iron and she's just like messing with these like old school video tools and making that kind of thing. So a lot of times, like, that's a question I love to ask, is just, what do you tinker on? And if people don't really tinker on stuff, or they don't have outside passion projects, it makes me less likely to want to work with them or hire them or that kind of thing.
Now, let me break in here for a second. Justin's been talking about core values, and a lot of people have core values. And some people think that they're fluffy and that they don't really mean that much. Here's my perspective. I've seen this with hundreds of organizations, but you've got to live the core values. You've got to hire by them. You've got to fire by them. You've got to develop people and really assess where they are with these core values. And that will help you create the kind of company with what you want. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be innovation, but if it is innovation, you can use the question that Justin has shared with you. You can also just use this to make sure that you're living the values. And if you're not, you want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about that. I can share with you some of the data. I can share with you some of the tools. I'll even give you what I give my paying clients on how to find their values, and maybe you just need to update them or refresh them. And so I'll give you that for free. Just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Now back to the interview with Justin. I've never heard that question on here, so that's a unique way to look at hiring someone that just thinks innovatively in general.
Yeah, exactly. And when people surprise you with that question, it's something where oftentimes, if they have like a passion that's like totally outside, or it could be adjacent, but like totally outside of the core work, that to me shows like a mind that's able to operate in like a lot of different places at once. And that kind of thing is like really important to just the type of people we want working with us.
We like to do research on people that we bring on the show, because we rarely take pitches. All those people that say they listen to the show and they want to be on the show, sorry,
Yeah.
bubble. But you've got innovation, dedication, creativity, compassion as your core values. Why were those the ones that you selected? Like, what was it about having these core values that really wanted you to create the company that you have today?
It was interesting because we had like an all company event on Catalina Island a couple years ago, and we started with a list of maybe like 15 or 20 potential core values. Mm-hmm. And it was something that we wanted to really put to the team. And so we essentially did a vote and called down which were the ones that were the most important to people. And there were other ones on there. Like, I'm kind of like a sneakily competitive person. And so I'm like, maybe that's one of our core values, that we're competitive. And I think we are, but it was really the team who helped craft that. And it's something where, as we looked across the different people on the team, or as we brought in other people, you really want to kind of check off, like, what elements do they have here? And those are, whether it's creativity or dedication, or big heart or innovation, those are things that I feel like are really this kind of beautiful Venn diagram, where they're different enough, but also, like, when put together, create like a really strong workforce, really powerful group of people. So that was the thing where I wanted the group to kind of come together and like decide on that. And I'm really happy with where we landed.
I want to kind of switch gears, Justin. I'm really curious about innovation as a way of working. Is there anything specifically that you guys do? Like, I know some companies do like a 20% of your time you can work on anything you want, right, or something like that. And some of those work, some of those don't work. So I'm curious, what is it that we would see in your organization as it relates to innovation?
It's funny because I worked at Google, and that whole like 20% project thing, I think, is kind of like a myth where they just say that. And I'm like, okay, all right. Like, I remember when I first started there, I'm like, oh, this 20% thing. And they're like, well, it's maybe more engineers do that or whatever. I think for us, one thing I really love, and is just a part of what's really what we call BMP DNA, is we love to do these holiday gifts every year for our clients. And so we use these as like a place to experiment in new types of creativity, right? So we did a holiday gift 2 years ago that was like a fully custom card game. And every card was a different video project that we had done for a client. And the idea was that you sort of like a recipe game. You need these different elements to complete the recipe or to complete the video. And it was called Picture Lock. And we made this whole thing that was like custom designed. We worked with the game designer. We worked on the mechanics of this thing. And it was just so cool to see the team learn how to build a card game. We also did like a calendar where everything was like a custom image with the team. And last year we worked with a candle designer to make a custom BMP scent. So we sent out like 150 different candles that were BMP. Great internet was the smell of the thing. And one of my employees, she was like, my dream is to design a candle scent. And I'm like, that is so random. I love that. Let's figure it out. And worked with a local person here in Minneapolis, and she got to design her candle scent, and we got to package it and send it out everywhere. So that's like kind of like, again, adjacent to the work, but it's almost like that 20%, that tinker project, but something that we can do as an entire company and learn whole new areas which are unrelated to our core business.
We've been talking about innovation through the whole episode, and I wanted to kind of add something in here. We've been talking to Justin a little bit about how he uses innovation across his business. And I can't remember the name of the guest that's been on the show, but I'm going to repeat what I remember about how they bring innovation into their culture. And it's every month they pick an area of the business, like a department, and they analyze the problems in week one. What are the areas that we want to address? What do we need to improve? Maybe it's automation, maybe it's using AI, whatever it is. So problem week one is the problem statement. And then by week two, we've selected which one or two of those initiatives are most important that we can tackle within the next few weeks. And we're going to move that forward. And they develop a tiger team around this as they do it. And what was really interesting is the CEO is not the leader of the team. It could be an intern leading. It could be a manager or director or just a key employee, because they've got to feel passionate enough about it. They got to have the time to dedicate. But every month they pick a new department. I thought this is a really interesting way to look at innovation and see how they're growing and evolving. And if you're doing that every month and after 12 months, imagine the progress that your company would have and the innovation that you would be able to bring to it. Right now, AI is real hot. That'd be one of the areas that we're working in at my company. You probably should be looking at how do you create operational excellence with AI and look at it by department and take a month to really explore the tools and have it, develop a team and appoint a leader that doesn't have to be the CEO or an executive of the company. It can be anyone. Now back to Justin. Well, Justin, I know that we've had a broad topic of conversation around the values and really centered around innovation and how you scale by innovating. What have I left out that would really kind of put a punctuation point on this interview?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like the thing I'm like most excited about right now is like, for example, when you told me your story earlier before the interview, just about your kind of own journey and that kind of thing. So I'm, along with running this business, I'm also a documentary filmmaker, and I've done 2 different feature documentaries. The second of which is just came out in September and is about my conservative Christian parents' secret prosthetic nipple business. It's called Mom and Dad's Nipple Factory. So anyways, people can Google that, and it's a very heartwarming documentary. But what I've really been drawn to, especially in the last couple of months with new AI tools, which are allowing us to illustrate moments in a way that we've never had before, is I started working on my own like personal career sizzle reel. And so that's something that like I've been really excited to talk with folks about. The idea is essentially you see sizzle reels for an editor or a camera person or whatever, but you don't really see sizzle reels for like people's careers. And I'm just like really fascinated right now about tapping into that. Like, what are people's stories about their professional journey that we can use these new tools to illustrate in a way that's never been really able to be done at this scale before? And how do we tap into those stories so someone can have this really dynamic 30-second or a minute long thing that's like this core story about their career, what made them who they are. And so I think when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about creativity, art, all those things, and people, just a love of people. That's something where I made one for myself. It's a very intense 4 minutes because I've had a pretty crazy career, but it allows me to say, hey, watch this video instead of like me kind of dithering on for 30 minutes and condense it down to 4 minutes. So I'd love to do one for you if you're open to it. We can do it as an experiment.
Yeah.
And maybe, maybe it's something where like, it's sort of the reverse, right? You're interviewing me here, and then we can tell your story in like a new innovative way on the flip side.
I will tell you, when you were describing it, I was very curious about it, partly for two reasons. One, for the business, but then the version, my son's a wrestler, and he's an academic.
All right.
core, but he's a really good wrestler. He's not going to be a national champion or anything like that. But I want to put together kind of a sizzle reel for his senior year, and maybe even look back over, starting as a freshman. So, for two different reasons for that, but I'd love to take you up on that, Justin. Thank you for being here, sharing your wisdom, talking about scaling by innovation. And I know it's something that runs through the organization based on the stories you've shared today. So thank you for sharing those with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, another great interview here on the podcast. I'm really excited to share with you these types of interviews. And Justin, really delivers. Innovation is something I care about a lot. And I think that his description of how he uses core values and the questions that he uses to tune into that, whether it's natural for someone, and then all of the other elements that we talked about today, hopefully that will help you create a better understanding of what it would take to create a team that really does innovate. And so when you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, stay with courage. We'll see you next time.